Hey guys, you're welcome back to my channel. Today, thank you so much for stopping by. In this video, I'll be recreating this cute crop top that you can see on your screen. So if you're interested in this kind of video, keep on watching and let's get started. So I'm going to be drafting on my pattern paper first. I'll go ahead and fold my pattern paper into two equal halves because I want to draft out a full basic bodice. The length of my top is going to be 16 inches. I'll start by taking my shoulder measurement. Half of my shoulder measurement divided by 2 is 8 inches. I'm going to reduce it by 2 inches and I'm going to mark 6 inches instead of 8 inches. The next thing I'll do is to determine how wide I want my shoulder to be. So I'm going to mark 3 inches. I'll place my tape on the point that I took half of my shoulder measurement and I'm going to mark 3 inches. So take note of how I'm taking my measurement. The folded edge of this fabric is the part that is facing me. On my shoulder measurement divided by 2, on that point I'm going to go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope and then I'm going to slant into the neckline area like this. The next thing I'll do is to determine the depth of my neckline. I'm going to take 1 inch. I'll indicate that with a point and then I'll use my ruler to connect from the 1 inch to meet the point on the shoulder slope. I'll go ahead and mark out the points that I'll be needing for this tutorial. The distance from my shoulder to my chest line is 8 inches and the distance from my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. I'm going to rule straight lines across the points. After doing that, I'm going to take half of my armhole measurement, which is 8 inches. I'm also going to reduce it by 3 inches. So I'll advise that you reduce yours by 2 inches, not 3 inches. I took 5 inches and it became small. I'm going to connect the dots from the shoulder slope to meet the 5 inches and then I'll rule a straight line across because that is where my armhole is going to sit. I'll place my tape on the straight line and I'll mark the middle point. From that middle point, I'll place my ruler like this and I'll give it a curve just like this. The next thing I'm going to do is to turn my pattern paper to the other side and I'm going to repeat everything that I did on this side on the other side. Remember I said I'll be drafting a full block bodice, so that is what I'm going to do. So this time the opened edge of this pattern paper is facing me, so I'll start by taking half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. I reduced it by 2 inches, so I marked 6 inches. I'm going to take the wideness of my shoulder, which is 3 inches, and I'm going to go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. I'll then slant into the neckline area just like this. I'll mark the neck depth of 1 inch. I'll indicate that with a point and then I'll use my ruler to connect from that point to meet my shoulder slope. I'll go ahead and mark half of my round armhole measurement, which I took 5 inches, but I said you should reduce yours by 2 inches, not 3 inches, just like I did. So I'm going to mark my points. Distance from my shoulder to my chest line is 8 inches and distance from my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. I'll go ahead and rule a straight line across. After doing that, I'll also connect the dots on my shoulder line to meet the dots on the armhole area. So what I'm going to do next is to adjust my shoulder area. I'm just trying to adjust it to make sure it's still 3 inches. After doing that, I'll rule a straight line across for my armhole to sit. I'll place my tape on the armhole area. I'll mark the middle point and then I'll use my ruler to connect like this. After doing that, I'm going to go ahead and place my measurement. So I'm using a stretchy fabric for this tutorial, so I don't need to add any stitching allowance or zipper allowance. And please note that you should use a stretchy fabric for this particular tutorial. On the base of this pattern paper, I took my waist circumference divided by 4 and I marked that. I did not add any stitching allowance to it. I'm going to connect from that point to meet the base of of the pattern paper like this, and then I'll go ahead and cut the excess pattern paper. After cutting, I'm going to open my pattern paper up, and you guys, this is what we have. So I'll go ahead and determine which of the shoulder area I want the opening on this top to be. So I'll be doing it on this part so that you guys can see it very well. So I'm going to reduce this shoulder. I'm going to make it 2 inches. I'll advise that you make yours 1 inch because mine was a bit too wide than what you can see on the thumbnail. On this middle point, once I go in, the middle point of this pattern paper is 8 inches, which is okay for me. So you can decide to go in deeper. From my chest line, I'm going to go up by 2 inches because I don't want this effect to be sitting on my bust. I don't know if you understand, but I went up by 2 inches. You can decide to go up more than that if you don't want your chest area to be too opened. So I did that on the middle point. I'm going to use my ruler to connect from that middle point to meet the 2 inches on the neckline. So like I said, go in on your shoulder by 1 inch instead of 2 inches. You can even do half an inch if you want it to be as slim as the one you can see on the thumbnail. So we are going to be cutting out this armhole completely. So what I'm going to do is to place my ruler and then I'll curve it out like this. So I realized that I placed my ruler wrongly, so I'm going to place it back again, and I'm going to use my marker to connect it from there to this point, just like this. So you can decide to go in more. You can see that mine is different from the one on the thumbnail. I didn't go in, I just stopped at 8 inches. So you can decide to go in by 10 inches, 11 inches, depends on how open you want your chest area to be. After doing that, guys, I went ahead to cut, and this is what I have on my pattern paper. So I'm going to go ahead and place this pattern paper on my fabric, right sides facing each other, and then I'll go ahead and cut. So guys, I'm done cutting the main piece. I'm going to go ahead and fold the other part of this fabric, and then I'll use it to cut out my lining. So guys, after cutting, I have the main fabric and the lining. So I'm going to place one main fabric and one lining right sides facing each other. I'll pin all the way around, and then I'll go ahead and sew the neckline, the shape on the chest area, the sides, and the armhole area. I'm going to close everything up. The only part I'm not going to sew is the 2 shoulders. After sewing, I'll go ahead and knot, and then I'll turn inside out. So guys, I'm done sewing, and I've gone ahead to also turn it inside out, and this is what I have. I also repeated the same thing for the back. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place the front and the back on each other, right sides facing each other. I'll pin all the way around, and then I'll go ahead and sew. I'll sew the 2 shoulders close, and I'll also sew the sides. Yeah, after doing that, I'll also hem the base. I've gone ahead to do that, and I've turned it inside out, and this is what I have. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. Please don't forget to like this video. Leave your questions in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.